Today I'm going over the design argument for God's existence, and the most common objection we see with atheism. The design argument is, to many, the most convincing argument for theism. I will first mention the argument, then objections to it. Even Richard Dawkins himself claims it's the best evidence for God, in a video about a year ago on the Unbelievable podcast by Justin Breyer. So here's the layout of the design argument. Premise 1. The fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. Premise 2. It is not due to necessity or chance. Conclusion. Therefore, it is due to design. Premise 1 is just the possibilities for explaining the extraordinarily fine-tuning of our cosmos. Which of these three is the best explanation? We know necessity would not be a reasonable explanation. The universe could have easily been different or had different properties or principles. But that could have led to a collapse, hence why many would never argue for necessity. Chance is also a very, very unlikely explanation. The odds against a life-permitting universe are so impossibly great that it can't reasonably be the best explanation. Even if we deposit a multiverse, Alexander Vilenkin, who is an atheist, says, we can't run away from the cosmic beginning, even with a multiverse. The start to the show needs an explanation. He also says any universe expanding in space-time cannot be existent eternally. It had a beginning. And if the universe had a beginning, like ours that we see with the expansion, then there has to be an explanation of why it is the way it is. So atheists that try to argue that the multiverse by chance is the best argument would have to elaborate on why the multiverse is also designed, which leads to further complication and the need for a cosmic designer. Here is just a few examples of fine-tuning, according to experts. If the strong nuclear force were slightly more powerful, then there would be no hydrogen, an essential element of life. If it was slightly weaker, then hydrogen would be the only element in existence. If the weak nuclear force were slightly different, then either there would not be enough helium to generate heavy elements in the stars, or stars would burn out too quickly and supernova explosions could not scatter heavy elements across the universe. If the electromagnetic force were slightly stronger or weaker, atomic bonds, and thus complex molecules, could not form. If the value of a gravitational constant were slightly larger, one consequence would be that stars would become too hot and burn out too quickly. If it were smaller, stars would never burn at all, and heavy elements would not be produced. So, when we look at all of these examples, as we look at stuff like gravity, if these things were ever swayed ever so slightly, or the expansion rate of the universe, if it were higher or lower leading to a collapsing universe, or the charge of an electron, if this was different than it currently is constructed, then life would not exist. But as we continue, we can now get into the main objection by atheists like people of the name of Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins claims in his book The God Delusion that things only appear to be designed, which is fallacious. His central argument in the book is laughable in philosophical circles. Here is his argument in the book. He says that you can't infer a designer of the universe based only on the complexity of the universe, because it raises a further question. Who designed the designer? He then concludes that this is why God certainly does not exist. This is just simply question-begging, and we don't need an explanation of the explanation. This would also lead us to what we call an infinite regress. Where does the explanation stop, if no explanation is ever satisfactory? Richard Dawkins also tries to argue the best explanation is the most simple explanation, saying that God is just too complex of an explanation. But he is wrong again. God is remarkably simple. God has no parts to his being, as he is, as we say, a spaceless, timeless, and non-material being, or agent. Dawkins' argument fails in many ways, and people use another form of this who have tried to say, who created the creator? But again, this is the infinite regress problem. But if we look at the core problem of this question, we can then say this: why would a timeless being need a creator? As in, if there was never a time in which God did not exist, as if we say God exists outside of time, then there would never be a time that God didn't exist, so that he therefore needs no explanation for his being. He's just simply eternal by definition. So the most simple and best explanation of fine-tuning is a designer. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like content like this and comment what you think below. And enjoy the rest of this gameplay.
Spy plane standing by. Spy plane establishing perimeter Angel 6. Your RCXD. Spy plane fuel check 50%.
Adler requesting spy plane on grid.
Give them hell, guys.
All squad members RTB.
잘하는군. That's the win.